On the trail of the dinosaur. The Balkans. How Soviet T-34-85 tanks fought Yugoslav T-55 and M-84. Hey there, folks. Welcome to my channel, where we dig into the wildest, most gripping stories of war, machines, and the people who shaped history. If you're into tales where old-school tanks roar to life in epic battles and myths collide with hard facts, you're in for a treat. Today, we're diving into the Balkan Wars, a chaotic conflict that tore apart Yugoslavia and left scars still felt in 2025. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss a single episode, and drop a comment below. What do you think about those old Soviet tanks? Were they just rusty dinosaurs or battle-hardened heroes? Let's unravel the saga of the T-34-85, T-55, and M-84, tanks that became legends in a war that changed the world. This is going to be a long, thrilling ride, so buckle up. It's the late 20th century, and Central Europe is supposed to be catching its breath after the Cold War. But then, boom, a powder keg explodes. Yugoslavia, a patchwork of nations, languages, and old grudges, falls apart. Serbs, Croats, Bosnians, Slovenes, they're all pulling in different directions, and right in the middle of this mess are tanks. Not shiny new machines with high-tech gadgets, but Soviet relics. The T-34-85, a World War II veteran. The T-55, upgraded by Yugoslav engineers. And the M-84, a homegrown take on the T-72. How did these dinosaurs end up in the heart of a civil war? Why did their clashes become the stuff of legend? And what does this war teach us today? We'll break it down step by step, weaving in my thoughts, hard data from the web, and an economic breakdown to show the true cost of this conflict. This isn't just a history lesson. It's an epic tale of iron, people, and the price of peace. To get why Yugoslavia turned into a battlefield for tanks, we need to rewind. This country was born after World War I, when the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed. Think of Yugoslavia as a quilt stitched from mismatched pieces. Serbs, Croats, Bosnians, Slovenes, Montenegrins, Macedonians. Each group had its own history, language, religion, and baggage. World War II made things worse. Croatian Ustase committed atrocities against Serbs, Serbian Chetniks fought back, and Josip Broz Tito's partisans tried to unite everyone under a communist banner. Tito, a cunning and iron-fisted leader, held Yugoslavia together after the war. He played both sides, cozying up to the West while staying out of the Soviet-led Warsaw Pact, building a socialist state with a Yugoslav twist. But when he died in 1980, the glue started to come unstuck. Yugoslavia's economy in the 1970s and 1980s looked solid on the surface. According to the World Bank, the GDP per capita in 1985 was about $2,700. Not bad for a socialist country. They made Zastava cars, built highways, and even produced tanks like the M-84. But beneath the shine, trouble was brewing. Debts piled up, inflation soared, and regions fought over resources. Serbia wanted more control, while Croatia and Slovenia dreamed of independence. By 1990, the economy was crumbling, unemployment, shortages, hyperinflation. The IMF says Serbia faced hyperinflation of 300 million% by 1992. Imagine buying bread in the morning, and by evening, your money's worthless. Politics poured gas on the fire. Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic stoked nationalism, preaching a greater Serbia. Croatia and Slovenia declared independence in 1991, and all hell broke loose. This was the biggest conflict in Central Europe since World War II. Between 130 and 140,000 people died. Millions became refugees. The economic toll? Massive. Bosnia's GDP dropped 75%. Croatia lost $37 billion, per reports from Study.com. UN sanctions crushed Serbia. Factories shut down, fuel vanished, people starved. My take: Yugoslavia shows how economics and politics are a deadly mix. When money runs dry and leaders play the nationalism card, chaos follows. Here in 2025, the Balkans are still recovering. Eurostat data shows Croatia's GDP per capita at about 17,000 euros, Serbia's at 8,000. Better than the 1990s, but they're still trailing Europe. War isn't just about tanks, it's about shattered lives. Now, let's meet the tanks that starred in this drama. The Yugoslav People's Army, or JNA, was a powerhouse. Several hundred T-34-85 tanks, between 1,500 to 2,000 T-55 and about 700 M-84. When the country split, the tanks were divided. Serbs took the lion's share, Croats and Bosnians grabbed what they could. Macedonia? They mostly stayed out of the fight. The intrigue lies in how these Cold War relics clashed in a civil war, creating stories that still echo. The T-34-85 is a legend. Designed in 1940, it was a World War II hero. Sloped armor at 45 millimeters, a reliable diesel engine, and dead simple design made a masterpiece. Over 84,000 were built. Yugoslavia got them post-war, thanks to Soviet aid. By 1991, the JNA had about 250, but many were rusting in depots. Spare parts were scarce, and mechanics were long gone. Why call them dinosaurs? The armor was thin. 45 millimeters got punched through by any modern anti-tank missile. The 85 millimeters SS-53 gun was a beast in the 1940s, but weak against newer tanks like the T-55 or M-84. Top speed? 53 kilometers per hour on a good day, but in the Balkan mountains, it crawled. Yugoslavs tried upgrades, gyro compasses, even amphibious kits. Still, by the 1990s, these were museum pieces. Yet they fought. Fall of 1991, the Siege of Dubrovnik. A Croatian T-34-85, nicknamed Malo Bijelo, Little White, became a star. It survived 2 hits from Maljutka missiles, which could pierce 400 millimeters of armor, and then took out a Serbian T-55 by targeting weak spots like the engine or fuel tanks. Tank Encyclopedia confirms it also destroyed 2 armored personnel carriers and a truck. How? Maybe the missiles hit at an angle, or the tank was behind cover. Or maybe the crew was just that good. In war, guts and luck matter as much as steel. Another story. 1995, the fight for the Serbian Krajina. Bosnian Serbs in the 1st Posavina Brigade used T-34-85 tanks against Bosnian forces. They held their own, but mines and missiles took a toll. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, ICTY, says Serbs lost dozens of these tanks. Croats used captured T-34-85 tanks too, but in 1992, one Serbian M-84 wiped out 3 of them. Tech made the difference. Economically, the T-34-85 was cheap, about $60,000 per tank in the 1960s. But by the 1990s, maintenance was a nightmare. No parts, few mechanics. The war ate them up. Hundreds lost, billions in damages. The Wilson Center estimates the Balkan Wars cost the region trillions in lost GDP. Today, these tanks are museum pieces in Croatia and Serbia, but their stories live on. My take, the T-34-85 is a symbol of grit. It fought in Africa, Asia, the Middle East. In the Balkans, it proved old iron can still bite if the crew's sharp. But against modern threats, it was outmatched. Lesson? Armies need to modernize, or dinosaurs won't cut it. And it's the people behind the controls who make the real difference. Next up, the T-55, the T-34's heir. Rolled out in 1947, it was the world's most produced tank, about 100,000 built. Yugoslavia had between 1,500 and 2,000, upgraded with Maljutka missiles, night vision, and better armor. Its 100mm D-10T gun packed a punch, and 50 kilometers per hour wasn't bad for the time. But in tight city streets or rugged hills, it was vulnerable. The T-55 was everywhere in the war. In 1991, During the Battle of Vukovar, Serbian JNA columns relied on them. Croats turned the city into a death trap. Mines, HJ-8 missiles, rocket launchers. About 100 tanks were destroyed, dubbed the tank graveyard. Britannica notes the JNA lost hundreds of vehicles there. But Serbs hit back. In Dubrovnik, T-55 tanks pounded Croatian positions at Fort Imperial. Economically, Yugoslavia built T-55 tanks under license, saving money, about $150,000 per tank in the 1960s. But war drained resources. No spare parts. Factories in Croatia and Bosnia shut down. UN sanctions blocked imports. Study.com says Croatia lost $37 billion. Serbia even more due to the embargo. Tanks broke down, and crews patched them with whatever they could find. My take, the T-55 was like a trusty old pickup, reliable but not built for modern fights. The myth of it being unstoppable in the mountains fell apart. Mines and missiles proved otherwise. Today, T-55 tanks still roll in conflicts in Africa and Asia, but their era is gone. It shows tech needs smart tactics to shine. War also burns through resources fast. Peace is the only way to keep them. The M-84 was Yugoslavia's crown jewel. Production kicked off in 1983, with about 700 built by 1991. It was a souped-up T-72M1, a 1,000 horsepower engine, armor up to 700 millimeters, modern sights, and fire control systems. Built in Croatia's Slavonski Brod, it was a national flex. Yugoslavia even exported them to Kuwait, raking in millions. In combat, M-84 ruled. In 1992, one Serbian M-84 took out 3 Croatian T34-85 tanks. Its 125mm gun and thick armor were just too much. Tank Encyclopedia backs this up. But it wasn't invincible. In Vukovar, Croats knocked out about 20 with mines and HJ-8 missiles. In 1995's Operation Storm in the Serbian Krajina, Croatian M-84 tanks crushed Serbian defenses, helping reclaim land. Economically, the Soviet license cost $39 million for 1,000 tanks. Exports paid off, but war wrecked the factories. The IMF estimates the region lost trillions in potential GDP. Today, M-84 tanks serve in Croatia and Serbia, and some fight in Ukraine, proving their staying power. My take, the M-84 was Yugoslavia's bid to compete with global powers, and it worked. But war showed even the best tanks can't win alone. The myth of its invincibility didn't hold. Missiles found weak spots. Lesson? Tech matters, but unity matters more. The Balkan Wars weren't just about tanks. They were defined by battles that became legends. Let's zoom in on 3. The Siege of Dubrovnik, the Battle of Vukovar, and Operation Storm in the Serbian Krajina. Siege of Dubrovnik, 1991. Dubrovnik, a stunning Adriatic city, turned into a war zone. Serbian JNA forces, backed by Montenegrins, besieged it to cut it off from Croatia. Croats fought back with whatever they had, including T-34-85 tanks. One, Malo Bijello, Little White, survived 2 Malyutka missile hits and took out a T-55 by targeting its engine. Wikipedia's Siege of Dubrovnik page says it also destroyed 2 armored personnel carriers and a truck. How? Maybe the missiles glanced off, or the crew was just fearless. Battle of Vukovar, 1991. Vukovar was a tragedy. The city was leveled. Serbian T-55 and M-84 tanks rolled in, but Croats set traps. Mines, HJ-8 missiles, rocket launchers. About 100 tanks were lost, the tank graveyard. ICTY reports the JNA lost hundreds of vehicles, but Croats paid with thousands of lives. Operation Storm, 1995. In 1995, Croatia launched Operation Storm to retake the Serbian Krajina. Croatian M-84 and captured T-55 tanks smashed Serbian lines. Bosnian Serbs used T-34-85 tanks, but they couldn't keep up. ICTY says Serbs lost hundreds of tanks and 250,000 refugees fled. The economic hit was brutal. Study.com estimates the war cost the region 1% of GDP yearly in the 1990s. Destroyed cities, factories, roads, billions in losses. Dubrovnik's back on its feet, but Vukovar still bears scars. My take: these battles weren't just about tanks. They were about human cost. Myths like Serbs always won or Croats couldn't fight don't hold up. Croats took back Krajina, but what price? War's a lose-lose. The Balkan Wars spawned myths galore. 1. The T-34 was invincible. Reality? Hundreds were lost to mines and missiles. Another. Yugoslavia was a rich country ruined by enemies. Nope. It had $21 billion in debt by 1990, plus inflation and corruption. ICTY says all sides committed war crimes. Serbs blame Croats. Croats blame Serbs. Bosnians just wanted peace. Truth's in the middle. My take: war breeds myths. People crave heroes and villains, but reality's messy, eh? In 2025, social media still buzzes with who was right. The Balkans teach us: stick to facts, not propaganda. The war gutted the economy. The IMF says Yugoslavia lost trillions in potential GDP. Bosnia's GDP fell 75%. Croatia lost $37 billion. Serbia faced 300 million% hyperinflation from UN sanctions. Money turned to paper overnight. People traded cars for food. Long term, mines killed up to 5,000 post-war. Black market weapons fueled conflicts. Eurostat says Croatia's GDP per capita is 17,000 euros. Serbia's 8,000, better than the 1990s, but far from Western Europe. My take: without integration like CEFTA or the EU, the Balkans risked more wars. Growth's slow, but it's there. Lesson: peace rests on economics and dialogue, not tanks. Today, T-34, T-55, and M-84 tanks sit in museums. But their kin fight on. M-84 in Ukraine, T-55 in Africa. The Balkans remind us: war's a loss for everyone. Economics, dialogue, integration, that's the path to peace. Folks, this saga is about steel, people, and the cost of division. The T-34, T-55, and M-84 were icons of a war that broke Yugoslavia. Behind them are stories of crews, ruined cities, and lessons for us all. Subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. What's your take? What did we learn today? Hit like, share, and let's meet again. Let's learn from the past to build a peaceful future.